listening to Podium Podcast with Simon Hartley and Tom May. This is the show that invites the world's top athletes to discuss life in and after professional sport. Podium Podcast is brought to you by True Potential Wealth Management. To find out more, visit domorewithyourmoney.co.uk.
Hey Simon, how are we doing?
Yeah, all good, mate. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Is this our first podcast of the new year, or I can't remember?
Yeah. So, belated Happy New Year.
One of the first, anyway. Yeah, I don't think you can say that anymore.
Well, I'm going to keep going.
There was a cut-off when I stopped. Yeah, there was a cut-off when I stopped writing it in my emails. I was like, I can't keep writing this anymore. I'm looking forward to this. We've got Jody Cradock. Probably nearly 150 games, I think, for where am I going with this? For Sunderland, obviously. Did particularly well in the Northeast. Then obviously moved on to Wolverhampton. He's been on loan at a couple of clubs, but Wolverhampton is where I remember him. You worked with him before, didn't you?
Yeah. So we were at Sunderland together, and I remember him as a really, really great professional. We've talked about the kinds of players that squeeze every ounce they can out of the talent that they've got. He was absolutely one of those, and a brilliant bloke as well. Really lovely bloke. So, yeah, very much looking forward to this.
We're back, and we're here with Jody Cradock. It's great to have you with us, Jody. Wolverhampton and Sunderland. Oh, I call you a legend.
Thank you.
It'll go down. It's great to have you with us. My first question is not going to go to you, though, actually. It's going to go to Simon. Where's that shirt from?
So it's a Bundesliga football shirt. It's Bayer Leverkusen, who I worked with for a little while before the guy that I was working with left and moved to Bayern Munich. And as he moved, my allegiance moved as well. So, and actually my next trip over there, part of the deal is I need one of their shirts. So fingers crossed you'll see a new one fairly soon.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Anyway, back to more important things. Jody, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Very good.
And how's life treating you? You've got a really interesting story. Clearly, we're gonna dive into that a bit more. But firstly, back to your footballing career. I can remember sort of watching football when I was playing a similar age. I remember you Wolverhampton through and through. But actually, sort of doing research for this, Sunderland was where probably you got your first sort of hit the heights, right?
Yeah, that was it. So I joined Sunderland from Cambridge when I was about 22, I think, and I was just a relatively young lad. And it was all a bit of a new wide world, and it was great. I went up there. There was no pressure on me. I just had to go up there and learn from the older lads, and which is what I did. I went in, and I was fortunate. I played at Wembley at my first season, which was, a bit of a shock, but it was fantastic. I know we lost. It was that game against Charlton, but we did lose it. But for me, as a player that had just come from Cambridge, previously been doing my A-levels at school at 18 years old, it was just a monumental jump and absolutely fantastic.
Mucking about aside, I went from London up to Newcastle, and I was like, I was so far removed about what anything that the Northeast could offer. How did you find that move up to the Northeast? It blew my mind. I mean, it blew my mind so much. I stayed there for 10 years, so I must have enjoyed it. But how did you find that big move?
Yeah, like I said, I was a young lad, so didn't know what to expect. But I loved it up there. Other than the weather was absolutely all the time. It'd be summertime and the lads would be wearing gloves. So I'd be like, bloody hell. But the people were fantastic. It was something that really stood out. The people were absolutely fantastic. Not just the club. I mean, the people, like I'd go in a bakery and get a sandwich, and they were the nicest people. I'll just never forget it. And that's why I loved being part of the club and being up there. And, they breathed football, and it was great to be a part of that.
It's definitely true, isn't it? Northerners are far more friendly than Londoners.
Well, I go to London, so I can't comment. But all I can say is that they were fantastic, and they still are. The people are still lovely, and I keep in touch with people. And even going back as a player at Wolves, they were great. The reception I got was fantastic from them. So
I've always wanted to ask a footballer that, actually. sorry, Simon. That move when you leave somewhere and you go back, weirdly, I think, and slightly undeservedly, I took a fair bit of heat going back to Newcastle, having left after a long period of time, and that was quite bad. But I can imagine in football it's really bad. Well, it can be.
Look, I left Sunderland. They got relegated. It was one of them. They needed to offload a couple of players, and the Wolverhampton Wanderers wanted to buy me. And, who can't knock a player for wanting to stay in? I wanted to stay in the Premiership. Who doesn't want to stay in the Premiership? And that's the opportunity I got. I'd always said I could have stayed at Sunderland for the rest of my career quite easily, but it's just how football goes. They needed to change things, and that's what happens when teams get relegated. They get rid of players. For better or for worse, and I was one of them. Unfortunately for Sunderland, but fortunately for me, I got to stay in the Premiership and play in the Premiership. So yeah, and it was never, always enjoy it. So I enjoyed going back, and I think the people I was just the player that worked his socks off all the time, and I think the fans appreciated that. I was talking to my lad the other day about players that don't celebrate goals. When they go to another club and play their old previous club, and players that don't celebrate goals, I'm thinking, I can't understand it. Why for me to go and score a goal at whatever club or any level, it was just like, it's fantastic because I'm a defender and I don't get, too many, chances to score goals. So when you score a goal, you celebrate it. And I went back to Sunderland. It was the first time I played. I'd been back and been sub, but I'd been back and played, and I scored a goal. And I celebrated, and I don't think, I got no stick from Sunderland fans, and I can't, how can you not celebrate? And there's just a little something that just confuses me. I think they do it out of respect, but I think, well, you're playing for your team you're playing for now. You went there for a reason. So
yeah, I think you're right, actually. I mean, having been there at the same time as you were at Sunderland, I think you're right. They just appreciate people who give it their all. And then if they do move on, they move on. But they just want people who are willing to give it everything. And, having spent a year up there with you, absolutely, I knew that you put everything into it. Really interesting because you're, as you said, you played at Wembley. We were part of a side that got relegated. Then you moved on. You get a lot of highs and lows, sometimes within a short space of time. What did you learn from both the highs and the lows when you were playing?
Do you know what? I never changed anything. I always came in early and did my weights. I always worked as hard as I could possibly work in training, and just put everything on the line, and that was it. And I'd go on the pitch on a weekend, and if it meant me putting my face in front of a boot to stop a goal, then I'd do it without thinking. So, I think not just from having highs and lows, but I just think as a career in general, is just give everything because it's so short-lived. And if you do the best you can every single day, I always I help coach kids teams, and I say, you should train like you play. And if you train like you play, it becomes easier to play because, you're used to it when you train. And that's what I did. And that's what I did every single day. And I'd take that home and I'd eat sensibly and I'd look after my body. And, I think whilst it's just, I had a 20-year career, but even, in comparing that to the standard job, when you're working to 50, 60, whatever you're working to, it is short-lived. And I had a long football career. So, for me, it was super important to just give everything I possibly could because it could just fall down in a second. And I think that's how I went into football, is because I went from school to football. I did my A levels because I wasn't good enough before the age of 18. So at 17, I wasn't quite good enough. I tried to get trials here and there, but it wasn't quite right. But I played men's football at the age of 17, and it just brought me on leaps and bounds. And I think because I came into the game late, I really appreciated, how hard it was to be a footballer. So I kind of had that mentality throughout my whole career. So whether it was a high or a low, I just did the same things day in, day out because that was what worked for me.
We hope you don't mind us interrupting this episode with a very brief shout out to our partners at the Podium Podcast, True Potential Wealth Management. At True Potential Wealth Management, their mission is to help you do more with your money. Expert financial advice, innovative investments, and leading technology are all designed to put you in control and help you achieve your financial goals. To find out more about their specialist advice, investment opportunities, and pension services, visit domorewithyourmoney.co.uk. That's domorewithyourmoney.co.uk. With investing, your capital is at risk. True Potential Wealth Management LLP is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Thanks for listening. Now, let's get you back to this week's show.
Simon, you've had experience across various different sports. Something that Jody talks about there in terms of working your stocks off. It's something, very similar to what I've said to you before. I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the quickest and strongest, or most skillful, to be honest. But I'd graft harder than most of the others. I know that rings true, that teams in the Northeast are support, and if they can see that they're working hard, the fans get behind them. Does that happen across all of the teams that you've worked with? Does that, because I can imagine at some clubs working hard is not good enough. Whereas actually, it seems the Northeast, if you are a grafter and you're willing to put it on the line, put your balls on the line, then you will get backed.
Honestly, I think genuine fans appreciate it. Whichever sport they're in, genuine fans appreciate that because they can see. But really interestingly, as Jody was saying, I can remember you being really, really consistent. And you're right, consistent preparation equals consistent performance. And I was chatting to one of the players I'm working with at the moment about, sort of competing as hard, training as hard as you compete and competing as hard as you train. And, kind of raising that level of training so that when you walk out on the pitch, you can do it. And I think, as you guys were both saying, for people who aren't, kind of blessed with bags and bags of innate natural talent, you can certainly create, sort of work ethic is a talent, if you know what I mean. So you can create your performance on the back of work ethic, on the back of diligence, on the back of eating the right stuff, drinking the right stuff, sleeping at the right time, training as hard as you can, putting in the routine. And I think that's what ends up showing on the pitch, and that's what people appreciate.
Jody, you mentioned A-levels. Not many, I would say, that go into top flight football would be doing their A-levels. Now, you say you hadn't had the opportunity beforehand, but clearly you had the enough to be there or thereabouts.
Yeah.
I would imagine if at the time if you had the opportunity, you wouldn't have done the A-levels and you would have done what most 18-year-olds would have done and gone and play football. Well, but now are you happy that you had that?
I did it the right way. You say that. I had Tony Pulis when I was 16, 17. I just started my A-levels, and Tony Pulis, I had a meeting with Tony Pulis, and I went and trained with Bournemouth's first team, and they wanted me to sign a YTS. So like there's a year and a half of YTS, but I'd already started my A-levels. What possessed me to say, no, I'm not going to sign. I want to finish my A-levels. I don't know what possessed me to do it. You know what I think it was? I didn't think I was good enough to be a professional footballer. That's what it was. And I said, let me finish my A-levels. As soon as I finish, I'll come and, I played a few games with the reserves, which was great. And I coped absolutely fine. I said, let me finish my A-levels and then I'll come and then I'll complete the rest of the YTS. And he's like, great, I don't know. So I rang the YTS, whoever ran the YTS team, I rang him up after my A-levels and I literally said, hi, it's Jody Cradock. I'm told to ring you up at the end of my A-levels. And he just went, who? And I went, okay, then, thanks. And that was the end of that. And so I just went, I was playing at Christchurch for the men's team. And then, fortunately, Cambridge United rang. And literally after I finished my A-levels, maybe within a week, and they rang. And as they say, the rest is history. And I went down there. So
it's interesting. I'm in my last year of doing A-levels, I was playing for England schools, and we had a revision course that clashed with, I think it was England, Scotland, or whoever it was, and I was obviously thinking, well, I'm obviously going to play the rugby. I'm not going to go on the revision course. And my dad said, no, you're going on the revision course. So I was one of the only guys that had played the first 2 games, disappeared to go on a revision course, and then came back and played the last one. And actually, in hindsight, I think that's sort of replicated itself throughout my career, in that I went to university while I was playing, and I got something done. And I've set up and failed and potentially succeeded within various different businesses I ran along the side playing rugby. But I think that sort of grounding that you would have had from doing that, your A-levels, gave you a bit of an insight into what path might have been like had it not been football. Do you have any sort of idea about what you wanted to do as a side?
Who does at 16, 17? I didn't really. I liked art. Obviously, I did A-levels at school. I just about passed them, believe it or not. I tried to go for an interview to be a fireman, and I did all the interview, but they never told me I was 16. I was way too young to do it anyway, but I still went through the interview process. But so that never came about. I don't know, a PE teacher possibly. That was going around my head. So there were little things that I was interested in art. I loved sport. So there was stuff going around my head. So, but yeah, taking that into football. When I went to Cambridge to play football, I made sure I did, courses on the side. The PFA. I was no money at Cambridge. I was absolutely skint. So the PFA literally paid. If I wanted to do a course, they paid for the course. So I did a sports nutrition course, sports psychology course, which was all paid from them. Which I thought, oh, brilliant! I might as well do that because I have time in the afternoon to do it after football. So I just got that under my belt because I honestly thought I wasn't good enough and that it would stop at any second. But I think because I thought I wasn't good enough, I pushed myself even more to make sure I was good enough. So, they'd have a day off at Cambridge on a Wednesday, and I used to think, bloody hell, a day off? How come they got a day off? I've only just joined the club. What am I doing having a day off on a Wednesday? So I used to just go in and I used to literally kick a ball against the wall for 4 hours and, just improve what I could with the facilities I had. So I think that's been my mentality throughout my whole career, and I think that's why I created and forged a career for as long as I did.
And have you done stuff alongside your football as you moved clubs along the way?
In terms of what?
Something outside of sport, or have you carried those interests on, I guess?
And the art, obviously, that's the one thing that I'm doing now, which I couldn't do at Cambridge because I just couldn't afford it. I could afford a pencil and a piece of paper, so I did drawing, bit of drawing. And didn't ever intend to be an artist. When I went to Sunderland, I could afford more materials, so I did. I brought oil paints, and I thought, right, I'll teach myself how to oil paint. You don't do oil painting at school because it's just too messy and too expensive. So yeah, I literally taught myself how to oil paint. I've been the type of person that, if there's a way to do something, I will teach myself how to do it, and however long it takes me, I will find a way. So hence, I've got to the point where I can literally paint anything I want to paint because I've taught myself so many different methods and techniques that I've just picked up along the way. So
that's brilliant. Was it just an interest that became, kind of a more intense passion over time? Did it just start off as a hobby, a bit of an escape from sport, exactly, and you just got better and better and better through the process?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I did my coaching badges because I thought, I always want to be a coach. But as the more I did art, the more I'd just go home and train. After training, nothing in particular. I'd read a magazine. I think that's a nice picture. Right, I'll try and paint that, and that's all. And that's as simple as it was. And the more I did, the better I got, to the point where, when, in the early days, I had to pick wisely what I wanted to paint because I couldn't paint everything. Now, providing I can think it up and create an idea, I'm 99% sure I'll be able to put it onto canvas and paint it.
Wow. I've looked at the Instagram page you've got. I was looking at it the other day, and the ones that the pictures I thought were mind blowing were the ones that looked scrunched up on the page, and then you turn it sideways and it's paint. I was just like, oh wow, like this mind bending stuff.
Well, yeah, thank you. My main stuff I do statues is my main stuff, and that stems back from going to Rome 19 years ago and just falling in love with Rome. So that's my main stuff. They've got a bit of a twist. They have graffiti and stuff on them. I think my nature is I can't do the same thing every single day for the rest of my life. So I have to then put different things in. So hence the screwed up stickers, and I do mini oil paintings. And of course I take on commissions where people ask for anything. So
does that thing of not doing the same thing every day, I've got a similar trait to that, in that as Justin and Simon will tell you, I've got various different things going on in my life, which mean that every day is different, or slightly different anyway. And that comes from the monotony of having had 18, 19 years of knowing exactly what I'm going to be eating at that time of the day and what I'm going to be kicking or tackling at this time of the day for so long. I think the varied nature of what life provides you outside of sport is actually, that's what's quite exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
But perhaps what people don't realise is actually something within sport that can come quite tough to deal with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, and art's an outlet for me. It always has been throughout my career as well. But yeah, I just can't do the same thing every single day. And I think it's just my personality. I don't know. I have too many ideas that I can't not do something else.
Yeah.
But I understand the art world where people need to understand, you know, I have my main stuff. This is my main line of stuff. But yes, you know, dig a little bit deeper, you'll see what else I do. And, you know, also it needs a commercial value. I'm not an artist, which I need to sell my art. That's why I paint. It's no good having a studio full of artwork and nobody buying it. You know, I'm not. So, you know.
Yeah, that was my next question, actually, because being passionate about something is brilliant. Turning it into a profession is a completely different ball game often. So how did it become a profession? I mean, how do you make it a profession? How do you make it pay the bills? Because, like you say, just being good at it's not always enough to make it a profession.
No, it isn't. There's plenty of crap I see out there which earns thousands upon thousands of pounds, which I look at and think, oh my God, you know, give me 1 hour, I'll create the same thing. But I know that's not how the art world works. Yeah, you know, it's a tough world to be in. And I wouldn't recommend being an artist because it's ups and downs. It's I can have a busy month, I can have a quiet month, you know, but I have plans where I'm trying to work towards art fairs, which I do quite well at. And it's kind of having that plan of knowing what sells. But I've also got to enjoy painting it. So, yeah, it's not easy as just sitting there and painting. I do need a plan of, right, how am I going to sell this? Where am I going to take this to sell? You know, different parts of the country like different things. So yeah, it's that's the hard. Painting's easy.
Did you come across Steve Black when you were at Sunderland then?
Yes.
Yeah. So he used to say to us, in life after sport, find something you're passionate about and find a way to make money from it. Yeah. And you've just done exactly what that is. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. I love painting. Love it. So even if I couldn't sell it, I'd still do it. Probably if I couldn't sell it, you know, I wouldn't do it as much as I do. You know, I literally paint all day, every day. I'll start from 8 and finish.
You're looking quite clean for an artist, like a painter.
The postman comes to the door and I've got head to toe covered in paint. So yeah, I haven't got my artist clothes on today.
How did it all start, though? Where did your first commissions come from? How did you get the business behind it?
Just from Sunderland. Yeah, so just from Sunderland, I was doing some work, and I was just doing it in the lounge. Didn't have a studio. I'd just stick it up in the lounge and paint in the lounge. Somebody saw it and said, "Oh, this is really good. You should do some of this." And I'm like, "Oh, whatever, So next thing you know, I was doing I did. Was it Look North? I think it was the local TV station. So I did that program. And they showcased it, and it just snowballs from there. And the more I did, the better I got. So a couple of players were like, "Oh, can you paint just had a new, we've just had a baby. Can you paint the baby? I'm like, yeah, cool, no problems. And my style's changed, quite a lot over the years. But yeah, could you paint this picture of me scoring a goal? Great, yeah, no worries. And it just slowly went on from there. It was always in the background, but I'd always be doing it. And then at the end of my career, it was like, do I go into football and stay, or do I stay in football and do coaching and, earn a fraction of the money anyway, and still not see the kids at Christmas, and still not see the kids in the holidays? And I'm thinking, do I really want that? I'm thinking, that's what my head was saying. My heart was saying, I love painting. I want to just paint as much as I can. And that's what I do. Because I don't know, kids, they grow up super quick. So to miss Christmases and miss school holidays just wasn't an option for me. I just didn't want to regret that when they're, 18, 19, 20 and regret that I'd done that and hadn't seen things that, hadn't been involved in that time.
I think it's something that I answer people when they say, well, why have you not gone into coaching? Even though I am coaching the under-13s and London-Irish right now, which is hilarious. The one of the things I didn't want to do was all of the good things that come with playing. That doesn't work in the coaching world. You just get the crap bits.
Yeah.
Like you're coaching the team. If they're doing badly, it's your fault. It's no one else's fault. And then you don't get your weekends when you do want to go and spend time with the kids or all of the stuff that you've decided and chosen to do. That now is like, well, I don't really want to choose to do that now. That's when I need to turn around and give my energy elsewhere. You talked about your determination to get to the sort of succeed in art, get good at art. You're never going to do something and just do it half-assed. Do you think that's one of the things that's your own personal traits? Or has that been developed within sport? And what other areas do you think of Jody Cradock, the sportsman, have you brought into Jody Cradock, the artist?
Well, yeah, just that pure determination, literally to teach myself to paint. I'm self-taught, and by doing more and more. And artists are renowned for, if I see something really good and I used to think, I'd love to know how to do that. Artists are renowned for not telling you how to do it. And if you pick up a great technique which really works, I'm not going to then pass it on to the next artist to say, oh yeah, you can go and do the same thing as what I do. So it's really hard. It was just trial and error for years of learning how to mix colours. As silly as it sounds, mixing colours is a massive part of painting. And, I've learned how to mix colours, to get any colour that I want. And it's just little things like that, but it's that pure determination. And that, have I taken things out of football that go into art? No, not really. They're two different worlds. Just the perseverance and work hard at that one thing that I think you need to do in any walk of life that you do. I don't think that's sport or art related. I just think that's life related. And you say to your kids, and they're like, I've got a test at school. We just say, do your best. And if you've worked hard, then that's all you can do. And if you come back and you've failed, then what else can you do if you've worked your butt off to get there? So that's all we say is work as hard as you can and you'll get your results. And if you don't, what else can you do?
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective, because lots of the conversations that Tom and I have had with athletes who've gone on to something else in life, we've talked about what they took from sport into whatever they did, business or whatever. But actually, for a lot of people, they took themselves into sport and then themselves into something else. And actually, it was the traits and characteristics they probably had already that made them a good athlete in the first place that then helped them in the rest of their life. And lots of really great athletes that I've worked with over the years, when you look at them in their sort of competitive playing world, they're the kind of person that could be successful in anything because they've got the work ethic. They're able to develop themselves. They're self-starters. They're pretty good at sort of analysing their own performance, understanding where they need to improve, and they've got that inner drive to develop and improve themselves. All of that stuff they probably had anyway. They took it into sport, then they took it out into the rest of life with them.
Yeah, I'd say I 100% agree. That's, when I was at Cambridge, So in my first year or so at Cambridge, we'd all gone to Magaluf on holiday for a week. So drank as much as we possibly could for a week. And I come back and I thought, right, I need to get back, get a bit fit. And I remember going for a jog, and I got about half a mile and thought, I think I'm going to have a heart attack. I was thinking, I vowed never, ever to get to this point ever again. And from that point on, as soon as the season had finished, I'd literally have a couple of days off and then I'd start building back up again. And I
can remember seeing Tom try to jog half a mile as well.
Mate, I'm not built for long distance. I told you that.
It's like
I've got to unhitch the sort of trailer that I've got being dragged behind me. Horrible. I remember what we go back to Steve Black. We used to train at Druid Park at Newcastle occasionally in the summer, and pre-season, and he'd have us running massive sort of circles with his two sons, Stephen and Mark, who were lunatics when it came to fitness, and there was boys throwing up and all sorts of as you do during pre-season. The Newcastle United footballers were in the middle playing header tennis. It was a real mind bender because you're there absolutely killing yourselves. You're like, there's something wrong here. Like, these boys are just playing header tennis.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
They've earned more in that day than we earned in that year. It was something to deal with, but it was good all the same just to see how different sports work and that whole sort of dynamic. It was good. We talked a bit before we came on air or onto the podcast about your son, and he plays football, and he's now got an opportunity to actually. He's pretty good at football, but he's now moving into a career path where actually looks like he probably stick with a career rather than rolling the dice with sport. And do you think there's more and more youngsters that are looking at sport and going, it's too high risk, or do you think there's still the element whereby that's the sport I want to do?
I think there's still the element, but it's at a younger age. That's the sport I want to do. And, I didn't go to I didn't have a YTS, so I didn't go to all that palaver. It really, irritates me when your parents of kids at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old that push them in and they're trying to get on, my lad's at Villa or Birmingham or wherever they're at. And it drives me mental because this lad doesn't mature till he's 16, 17 years old. And that's when you'll see what type of player he is. But don't get me wrong, you might get one lad that might get through out of a million and do all right, but they need to be told, right, if you're going into this club as an 8-year-old, there's a very, very strong possibility he's not going to make it. So I think as long as you lay it all on the table and say, there's a chance he's not going to make it, then your son isn't going to be super upset when he doesn't make it and we just discard him within a second. Because I've had it with the teams I've run, and I've get kids come in and they have been ruined from clubs that have just discarded them because the clubs don't care. They'll just have them in to make up numbers, and then away you go. And
what are your thoughts on? So my lad Oscar's 12, and he's, in my opinion, does too much rugby. I think he should be balancing that with other sports. And a friend of mine's son, he's actually in the QPR. Sort of ranks is coming through. He's very, very young, but he's going along that path. And again, plays a lot of football. With both of those, there's an element whereby I think it's really difficult because you deal with the situation as is. And, if I'm loving my sport and I'm loving my football and my rugby, I'll focus on that and it's going quite well. But I think actually you become a better footballer or you become a better rugby player by doing multi-sports.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, I'd play football at the weekend. I obviously do sports at school. I'd be doing something every night. So I'd be going to play squash with my mates. I'd play in the summer, go and play tennis. I play table tennis. I'd be doing something every single night. And, I see kids now when they can't catch a football or can't catch a tennis ball at the age of 12, 13. I'm thinking, what's happening here? can't even catch a tennis ball. Yeah. All I did as a kid was, I know it's a different world, and I know there's phones and I know there's computers. It's a different, conversation altogether. But you still have a garden and you still have a ball and you still have a mate and you can chuck the ball to him. But there's less want to do that now, I think. I just think, mind you, as a kid, I just think that's what I wanted to do. I was quite active and I needed to be active, and I just think that helped with everything. But it's frustrating. Some children you can see, these need to be going to an academy and they need to be playing football, and they do need to be pushed, because there are some kids, you can see it in them. But the massive majority just need to enjoy it. And there's some of them that will make it, but because their parents are pushing them, they won't make it and they'll end up hating it in the end. But yeah, I know it's a shame, but I understand them from a parent's point of view. If your lad's, he's 10 and a Premiership club have just come in for him and said, look, we'd like him to come and train with us. I also understand that the excitement and, wow, he could be a professional footballer. But I just wish they'd tell him more. There's a very strong chance that he may not make it, but we'd like him to come along and just try anyway, just to see if we can, bring him on and get some out of him.
Yeah, and I think lots of sports development, lots of the systems in sport, and it's not just in sport, but in business as well, are actually quite short term in their outlook. They want a good 10-year-old because they want to win the under-11s competition, and they're not really thinking about whether that 10-year-old is going to be a future professional player or not. I've had so many conversations with elite coaches, and I say, okay, if you look at your first team players, for example, now, or your international squad now, and you rewind back, what were they like as a 13, 14-year-old? Were they the most talented kid in the squad? Usually the answer is no, they weren't. And then we start to kind of unpack that and say, well, in that case, what do we need to be developing in these kids to help them stand a better chance, maybe of being a professional player, but just of being more successful in life? And maybe that's not about kicking footballs today or throwing rugby balls around. Maybe it's something else. Because when you tell me what those players had when they were 13, 14 that allowed them to become a successful pro player, it wasn't that they could perform a skill at 13 or 14, or even that they were the fastest or strongest or whatever. It wasn't that at age 13, 14. It was something else. So maybe we should develop those qualities a little bit more in the kids. Because
I totally agree.
My outlook is that would help them, whatever they do, football, rugby, whatever, or be a lawyer, be an accountant, be a teacher, whatever. That it would help them in all sorts of areas of life.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that the issue you get is you take the clubs around the Midlands or wherever it is, the North East, and they're getting the players in. They all want the players, so it's a kind of a bit of a cutthroat game, isn't it? They want these players in. That's why they get them in, because if they get that one player that grows up to be a Jack Grealish, then they've succeeded. But they don't want the other club to get him, and so I do understand it, but it still doesn't make it right. But I do.
I don't think. I understand it from a club's perspective, but I don't think it doesn't do the individual any good.
No, not at all.
And I think that needs to be. It needs to. I don't think it will. I think it needs to be changed.
Yeah, it won't change.
No, as long as there's money involved, which clearly there will be.
Yeah.
You would have played with and against some brilliant players. Who's the biggest pain in the arse that you've played against? Because there's all sorts of little stories that come on. So must be a few.
Well, there's always like people say, "Who's the best forward you marked?" I always say Thierry Henry. He was ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So. But, I played against other great players. I played against Eric Cantona once. I was at Cambridge. I think, what an absolute legend he was. So we were Cambridge United, Division 2. This is Man United. It was a pre-season friendly, and they had... so it was Eric Cantona, it was Ryan Giggs, Mark Hughes up front as well. I'm thinking, wow, this... I'm 18 years old. What the hell am I doing playing against Eric Cantona? I had a right good go, and he actually couldn't be bothered. One. But I had a right.
How very French.
But I'm thinking, what a privilege that was to play against him. But then, on the flip side of the coin, I'd play against, a meathead. There was a lad at Plymouth. I don't know his name. It was when we were allowed lower down in the divisions, and he used to just give me one hell of a tough time every time I played against him. and that was his game. You know, he'd be backing in, elbowing, doing all sorts. And I just remember, I'd just think, oh, not him again. And he would be tough to play against.
Yeah.
You know, my debut was against Kevin Francis and Jason Priest. I think Kevin Francis was 6'7", 6'8", and Jason Priest was 6'4". And I'm thinking, they've asked me to, you know, I was 18. They said, oh, you know, you'd be right to play. I'm thinking, yeah, of course I'll play, you know. Absolutely breaking it. And I'm thinking, how am I going to cope against it? I did cope, and, you know, it was all right. But I remember we had a corner, or the play was down the other end of the field, and I'm thinking, and I'm stood behind Kevin Francis, and he swung an elbow to try and catch me in the face, and I've ducked and missed it. I'm thinking, you know, what a way to start your football career. But, you know, it kind of taught me a lesson to always be on guard, you know, and it you know, it helped me.
I remember chatting to Scott Parker once, and they were coming up against Man United at the weekend, and he was saying, oh, it's like Ronaldo's playing. We used to get to rugby training in the big sort of dome they had at Newcastle United about an hour early, so we could all take free kicks. Yeah. And he was in there. He was in there before. I was chatting to him. I said, when you come up against someone like Ronaldo, what did you do? And he said, I just kick him. Like, there's nothing you can do to. So it was quite. Oh, is that actually happening in football? Like, if you can't cope with pace or whatever, just kick him. I was like, brilliant. There's hope for me yet.
My lad says, how would you mark Haaland? And I'm like, yeah, good, really, really, really good question, because he just even bullies the big centre halves in the Premiership. And I think, yeah, good question. How would I mark him? And I just said, look, you just have to get as tight as you possibly could get and try and stop him from doing it. You know, you give him space to play football, and he's going to come out on top every single time.
Someone like Terry, I call it Thierry Henry. We used to call him Terry Henry when we were watching him, but I nearly called him it then. But someone like Thierry Henry, how do you prepare to take on someone like that? Because I mean, he was lightning when he was playing at his height, wasn't he?
You know, so if you mark about, and he'd always play in an offside position, so he'd play behind us as a defence, and you either got to be really brave and just keep your line and just kind of know he's there, but let him stay in there. And then what he'd do was run along the line. You know, as the ball's coming, he'd step in and run along the line and make it really difficult. And that's the only player I played against that played football like that. And, you know, hence why he's probably one of the best in the world. But, yeah, how do you mark him? Good question. I don't have the bloody answer.
Yeah, there's probably a few in your boat that couldn't answer it as well.
When someone's fast, you give yourself an extra yard. Yeah. And when someone's big and strong, you try and get tight.
That's it, isn't it? I mean, you go back to what you can control. You probably try and play to your strengths. Go back to what you can control and what you can do. Once you've done the work in training, you put the preparation in, you're going to lay out the best that you've got on the day. And, you know, sometimes that'll be good enough, and sometimes they might score a few. But that's always what you go back to, isn't it?
Exactly. I always used to think, if you can, as that ball goes into that player, if I can get to him that second that ball gets that player, and I can stop that ball getting to that player, then he isn't going to do anything with that ball. If I let Thierry Henry pick up that ball, turn at me and face me, I'm now in a lot of trouble, and he's going to win the race, and he's going to probably get through and score. So if I stop it at source before he gets that opportunity, then that's how I, as a defender, would cope with, you know, most centre forwards, and well, that's how I play football.
I mean, I never really played football. I played when I was a really young kid, and I was nowhere near skillful enough. Hence, I ended up being a rugby player. But I've started playing with my daughter's. All the dads from the school, the mighty Red Lions, we play on that every Friday night. I love it. It's brilliant. There's so much running involved, whereas we're probably lazy bastards playing rugby. We just stop and sort of have a look about, you know, the scrums and stuff. We can get a breather, but there's no time to get a breather in football. I love it. It's so quick. You know, it's a real, you know, even though we're having a kick about, it's a real respect now. Now I watch it on telly, I'm like, these guys are machines.
Did you call your team?
And I say to my kids, you need to be an elite athlete. Yeah,
Did you call your team the Lion so that you could say that you were a lion?
Oh, that's a cheap shot, mate. Because I never actually made it. I have to now play for the dad's team that are called the Lions. Yeah. No, I was their last recruit. Funnily enough, I was like the fat kid in goal. But basically they just stand there and I run around like an absolute lunatic. I'm like the Keno that turns up with all the fitness tech, like the heart rate monitor and all that, because I just love it for a Friday night because it means I can have a couple of beers and a pizza over the weekend. It's brilliant fun. Jody, we always end up with the same questions at the end of each podcast. Okay. And today's no different. I still have to write them down, which Simon finds hilarious. If you weren't going to be a footballer, and I think we've touched on this, if you weren't going to be a footballer, what would you have been?
What would I have been as an artist? And that's what I am, an artist at the moment. So, that's we've talked about that.
That's pretty good to have been able to do what you would have done anyway. There's not many, I don't think, that could have a sort of sabbatical of sport and then go on to do what you wanted to do anyway. So that's fantastic. Who's the person you most admire in sport and also in business?
Well, these two is the same answer. So I always used to admire Michael Jordan, and I've watched his, if you've seen his documentaries, he is ridiculous. The work ethic, second to none, arguably the best sportsman of all time, and a sportsman that has turned himself into a business. Now he's retired, and who doesn't own a pair of Jordan trainers or a jumper or something? I'm thinking, wow, does it get much better than that? You were the top of your game when you played. Who could come close to him? Not many. And now you're at the top of your game with afterwards in business. So I think it doesn't get much better than that. Not many people can achieve that.
Well, you can take some of your Jordan money to invest in something here. There's some of your something for you here. You've got some money to invest. What are you going to invest it in?
What am I going to invest it in? I'm investing in cryptocurrencies.
Oh, wow.
Yes. That's the way we're going. It's going digital. We're going to be digital sooner or later. So that's
how have you done on all that? Or have you started yet? Or is that something you?
I have started, but due to war and COVID, the markets are pretty at the moment. But
I'm sure they'll bounce back.
Do my research and stuff. It will bounce back. So that's where I'd invest some money.
Nice. And you've got one film that you can watch for the rest of your life. What's it going to be?
You put this in the email, and I was thinking about. Forgot what. I am a Star Wars fan, so I suppose you'd have to just.
Oh, you can't have them all. You can't have them all.
Cool. No, so that's. No, I should have thought more about this question. I didn't.
Bend it like Beckham.
I've never seen it. Is it any good?
You would watch it for the rest of your life.
We're in a lot. I could watch.
It's hard. I don't think there's one I'd come up with.
How about 300? Seen 300?
Yeah.
It's good. I think I could watch that for the rest.
Have you done any of the workouts?
No.
Try them. They're
not
online.
47. I'm not trying.
I should probably take note from that. I think there's a challenge for you both. Try get online, Google the 300 workouts, and have a little crack at one of those. It's good. It's good fun. You have some interesting pieces of art after watching that for the rest of your life.
Go to the gym in the morning with my kids, so maybe I'll get.
Shut that one in. That's got soap for you. Hey, look, it's been brilliant having you with us, Jody. Thanks so much for your time.
Cheers, gents. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Listening to Podium Podcast with Simon Hartley and Tom May. This is the show that invites the world's top athletes to discuss life in and after professional sport. Podium Podcast is brought to you by True Potential Wealth Management. To find out more, visit domorewithyourmoney.co.uk.